Welcome to another episode of Don't Panic Geocacher. My name is Arjen and I go by Waterfan5 on the geocaching.com website. And in this episode, I will talk about two puzzles that I published in Rome, Georgia for the Going Caching Geo event. And I will give you some hints on how to solve those puzzles. So these are the two puzzles I'll be talking about. So you see the GC codes and the names, the old town of Nordholm and the mysterious island of Ragnar Stormheart. Now, if you think that both caches are a little bit Viking theme, that is correct. That was the theme of Going Caching, and these puzzles were placed in cooperation with the Going Caching mega event, and so they had a Viking theme as well. So let's take a look at the first one. There's quite a bit of flavor text, as you can see, so I put the flavor text here on the page. But the puzzle is actually this image that you see here, which is kind of like a town map, right? And I'm trying to give you some hints. So if you read through the flavor text, there's actually a couple of things in here that are important that may help you solve it. So first of all, it describes the houses as small, taller, and fallen houses. So those are the three styles of houses that we have. We actually have another style that's house with smoke coming out of it. That is kind of like a fourth type of house. But they're always small houses that have smoke. The other one tells you, and I debated a lot of this, but at the end I went with seem to give coordinates, but I made it seem to spell coordinates to make it slightly easier to solve. So we know that this is going to spell out coordinates. Another hint. And it also mentions at some point that the level of a 6th grader. This is actually important for solving, so don't think too difficult. It's something that a 6th grader should be able to solve. So I mentioned these are some of the hints. So what is this related to? Well, if you have letters and if you learn how to write letters like this, then you have tall letters, small letters, and fall letters. So basically the tall letters that use the two squares, the fall letters that fit within one block, and the other ones that go underneath. So given that we have to spell coordinates, that is what we're going to do here as well. Now these are some of the common words, and you can kind of see how they would be formatted. So for example, 0 is all S's, 1 is 3 S's, 2 is a tall for the T and then 2 small ones, 3 is 2 tall ones and 3 small ones, etc. We have a problem here, however, because some words here would be duplicates, like 1 and 6 are both 3 S's. So that kind of introduces the fourth category. We need some way to separate that. And basically what I did is that everything that has a dot is kind of like has that smoky symbol. So now if you know that, and you know that it spells coordinates, you can kind of make assumptions. This is kind of like the posted coordinates of the cache, so you know it has to be in this range. And now that we know that it spells coordinates, you can kind of like start figuring out what letters fit here. And so capitals are always tall, so this could be the letter N, and then this could be the word 30, because it's too long to be any of the numbers from 0 to 8. And 30 starts with too small, a smoky one for the I, a short one, a tall one, and then a fallen one, 30. So we know that this says north 34. This one, now we say west 85. And now based on that we know the algorithm, right, with tall, fall, and small, we can kind of derive the rest of the coordinates and kind of figure out what they have to say. So you can see that here that the next words, for example, would be, well, this has to be a tall letter, this has to be a tall letter as well, and this is an I. Well, given that this is the posted coordinates, the only thing that this would then can be is 15. Here, kind of like a similar thing, we have a 2-letter word. Well, this is a small and this is a tall. Well, we have to kind of figure out what it could be. But if we know that this is the 9, then we could, for example, be the word O would fit here to represent a 0. So because 10, 0, 9 would be within the radius. So that gives you a good head start in solving the rest of this puzzle. So this was the second puzzle. I published 3 puzzles, and they kind of went up in difficulty, and this was the most difficult one. So we see here again a map, in this case a map of an island, and the map has a grid on it, as we can see, and some squiggly lines. And it talks here about somebody named Ragnar Stormheart that kind of went up this island. But again, there's a couple of hints on here. So first of all, the word 9 is important. So we see here, if we start counting, then actually we can see that this is a 9 by 9 grid. And it talks about highs and lows. And also talks about that it's kind of like a balanced type island in a way that I cannot explain, or in this case, I didn't want to explain why it was balanced. And then it talks about the walk up on each trail was rough. So these are the trails. There were no flat parts, so it kind of always was going up, kind of emphasizing that these trails were always going up. The rocks, so here are the rocks, as you can see, they were kind of like a high point, but not necessarily the highest point, as it says here. And then the fact that the temperature rose throughout the day didn't help either. So the word temperature feels kind of like thrown in here, and that's because it's important and may give you a hint on how to solve it. Now, a 9 by 9 grid, there's many things that are 9 by 9. For example, the DT grid, you can think of the difficulty ratings. There's other things that are 9 by 9, but one of them is Sudoku puzzles. They have a 9 by 9 grid. This is actually a special type of Sudoku. If you have seen something like special variants of Sudoku, there is something called a thermo Sudoku. And a thermo Sudoku has as a habit that the number would always go up, like a thermometer. So in this case, this is an example of one where you see this line here, 1, 2, 1, 2, 4, 5, 8. The number goes up across that line. The same here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7, 9. The number goes up. And it does that for all these lines. So what we've seen here on this puzzle is that this is a thermo Sudoku, and this is the specific lines. So now with that knowledge and with this information on the cache page, we can get coordinates. Basically, the image had like a little ship here that was kind of like the starting point. It mentioned that in the flavor text, go north up and 3 east would get you this, and that would get you a number. But of course, to get you that number, you would first have to solve it. So this is kind of how you do it. I'm not going to explain the whole thing. I will link to a video that will actually be very, very helpful. Because what you need to realize is, okay, how much would fit? So for example, this is a long one. So the top one, of course, can be a 9, but could also be an 8. Because if we do an 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, that still works. And since we ended in a 2, it can also be a 7. So we know that this can be a 7 to a 9. Well, in that case, this can be a 6 to an 8. This can be a 6 to a 7, and so on. So we put all the candidates right in here, and we do that for every path. So you see that here, the longer the path, the more we can exclude. The shorter the path, the less we can exclude. And if you do that for all, call it the candidates, then you get like a grid like this, which says, well, these are the candidates. And now you have to start applying Sudoku rules. Like, for example, these 5 here utilize the numbers 1 to 5. So that means that these have to be the numbers 6 to 9, etc. So the same thing here. There's a couple of conclusions you could draw from this section right here that uses specific numbers. That means that this one has to use different numbers, and so on. So this is actually a pretty advanced Sudoku, and it can take you hours to solve. But once you get going, the end will go pretty fast. But in the beginning, it is can take a lot of staring and a lot of eliminating one number at a time until you get the first numbers out there. This was one way to solve it. There was actually a kind of like a second way to solve it. And that is, if you knew that this was a thermo Sudoku, and you knew it didn't have any numbers, then I kind of wanted you, if you were good with Google, to be able to find it as well. Because not everybody is good at Sudoku. And so what I had done is I had taken an existing Turbo Sudoku, one that is here, and it actually had a video online on how to solve this one. Now I didn't use the same one, I actually used a reverse one of this one as my solution. But in case of a reverse one, so-called twin Sudoku, what they call it, you kind of can say every time it's here a 9, in my puzzle it has to be a 1, and so on. So basically you can do a mapping. The other thing is, if you follow the video, you kind of learn how Sudokus work. It talks about turn Sudokus and how they work, and so you can kind of see how Jonas Klein, in this case, solved the Sudoku. So this is the title of the YouTube video. If you find that, you will find the solution. So that is the 2 puzzles. I hope you enjoyed this video. I will try to keep it short this time. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe. I have other ones. Also, of course, like the video. That way other people will find it as well. Feel free to leave a comment if you have any questions, or you can always reach out. I can be reached on the waterfan5 on the geocaching.com website, or you can send me an email at the email address listed here. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you appreciate it. I certainly appreciate you listening. Thank you.